Okay, I'm going to call to order the Sparks Planning Commission for Thursday, August 2nd, and we'll start with roll call.
Commissioner Vanderwall,
Here.
Commissioner Perry,
Present.
Commissioner Brock,
Here.
Commissioner Hewens,
Here.
Commissioner Peterson is absent, Commissioner Reed,
Here.
Commissioner Shabazz is absent, Assistant City Attorney Allison McCormick. Here. Assistant Community Services Director Armando Reynolds.
Here.
Okay, next public comment. This is for items either on the agenda or not, and you have 3 minutes to speak. Do we have any requests to speak in public comment?
Not this.
Okay, perfect. Next, we'll move along to approval of the agenda. Commissioner Carey?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve our extended agenda tonight as submitted.
Second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll move along to approval of the minutes. These are review and approval of the minutes of July 3rd Planning Commission study session. We're gonna have a motion.
Madam Chair, I move
Yes.
to approve the July 3rd Planning Commission study session minutes.
Commissioner Fuhlen, second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Motion carries. Review and possible approval of the minutes of the July 5th Planning Commission meeting.
Commissioner Fuhlen, I move to approve the minutes as submitted.
Okay,
Second.
Commissioner Funes and Commissioner Brock, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next, announcements and committee reports. Oop, you have to turn on your mic, Mr. Thank you.
Madam Chair, we have no announcements or informational items in committee reports.
Great, thank you. Next, we'll move along to public hearing items, and we'll start with PCN 18-0033. Consideration, possible action to amend the final handbook for Kylie Ranch North Phase 7.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. Karen Melby, Development Service Manager. Before you tonight is an amendment to the Kylie Ranch North Final Development Handbook for Phase 7 to allow private streets on a site that's 67.56 acres in site. The property is zoned a new urban district for the Kylie Ranch Phase 7 Handbook. It's located east of, here's Kylie Parkway, it's this property right here, outlined in blue, east of Kylie Parkway, north of Windmill Farms, which is here, and south of Lazy 5 Parkway. On December 7th, 2017, the Planning Commission reviewed the final draft of the Kylie Ranch North Phase 7 Handbook, of which the City Council approved on January 8th, 2018. When staff was recording this handbook, we realized that we had not corrected one page in the handbook that we presented to Planning Commission and City Council. So on May 14th, 2018, the City Council approved an amendment to the subject handbook correcting page or figure 2-3 on Phase 7 circulation plan on page 2-9. So before you today is actually your third review of this handbook. The master developer of the Village 9 or Phase 7 is proposing a gated community with private streets, entrance gates, and a private community clubhouse. The recorded Phase 7 handbook did not allow for private streets, gates, or private recreational amenities. Therefore, the applicant is seeking to amend the handbook to allow private streets, entrance gates, and as a development option within this phase. The changes in the handbook are highlighted in yellow, and the deletions are struck out. The only land use in this plan, only land uses within this final handbook are the low-density residential and open space. The handbook identifies the responsible parties for maintenance of the private streets, utilities, streetlights, fire hydrants, and the common areas. Since the approval of the Phase 7 handbook earlier this year, A tentative map was submitted and approved for 344 single-family lots. To be considered as a separate item tonight on tonight's agenda is a new tentative map with the private streets, utilities, et cetera, for 310 single-family lots. Addressing the modifications of the final handbook per the Sparks Municipal Code, Title 20, there are 10 findings. The first finding is A, which consists, the plan is consistent, or the amendment is consistent with the comprehensive plan in Truckee Meadows Regional Plan. The Phase 7 handbook is located within the Truckee Meadows service area, consistent with the regional plan goal 1.1. Phase 7 handbook provides residential densities of 4 to 7.9 units per acre, making it relatively compact single-family development, supporting goal MG6. The proposed amendments are to allow private streets which will provide a different type of housing opportunity in the Kylie Ranch North Plan development, so which supports goal H1. The subject property is within the city's sewer modeling and traffic studies. With this project, it is not expected to exceed build-out assumptions, supporting policy CF1. Phase 7 preserves the open space and the existing drainage through the property along the eastern portion of this property, which then complies with policy RC22. Finding B, which is consistent with the surrounding land uses, to the north, south, and west of the subject property is the Kylie Ranch Plan development. To the east is the Pioneer Meadows Plan development. The proposed amendment to Phase 7 handbook does not change the approved land uses, which are consistent with the existing and planned land uses in the adjacent areas. The proposed changes to the final handbook are to permit gated private streets and will only apply to this Phase 7. Finding C, the fiscally positive to the city for a period of at least 20 years. A fiscal analysis was not required with this application or this amendment, since the amendment would not change the permitted land uses. In addition, if some of the Phase 7 streets are private, it will reduce the city's infrastructure's maintenance costs. Finding D, which furthers the mutual interests of the residents and owners of the planned development and the public. The proposed amendments would allow another choice, a single-family gated community within the Kylie Ranch North Plan development. The amendments do not change the land uses or development densities of Phase 7. As discussed above in finding B, the changes are anticipated to have a limited impact on the residents or owners of the properties in the adjacent area, preserving the integrity of the approved Kylie Ranch North Plan development. Finding E will not impair the reasonable reliance on the residents or the owners within that plan development. The proposed handbook amendments do not change the approved land uses or the development densities. In addition, no development has occurred within this Phase 7. Therefore, there are no property owners. Finding F will not result in changes that would adversely affect the public. The proposed amendments are to allow for a gated community in Village 9. As discussed above in Finding B, the proposed changes are anticipated to have limited impact on the residents or owners of the property in the adjacent areas. Finding G, which is consistent with the efficient development and preservation of the entire plan development. The proposed amendments do not change the land use nor the density. Village 9 will be developed as single-family lots, which is consistent with the tentative handbook. Finding H does not adversely affect either the enjoyment of the land abutting upon or across the street from the planned development. The proposed amendments permit Village 9 to be developed as a gated community of single-family homes, which is anticipated to have limited impact on the adjacent residents. Finding I does not grant solely to confer private benefit upon any person. The property has a single property owner and simply allows Village 9 to be developed as a gated community, which benefits the future residents within that village. Finally, Finding J, which is public notice. Public notice was published in the Reno Gazette Journal on July 20th, 2018, and there were 32 property owner notices mailed out within 750 feet of the subject property. To date, staff has not received any phone calls or emails regarding this amendment. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions as of yet? Okay, this is a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing. Are there any requests to speak on this agenda item? Okay, with that, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for any questions, comments, motion. Commissioner Carey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Wanted to thank staff for following up on the information I requested at the study session. I'll just put it on the record. I had asked to see kind of how many private streets, how many miles of private streets would be within this phase of the development. It turned out to be 2.5 miles of that would be private streets within that. So I appreciate staff following up with that.
Okay, any other questions, comments?
Madam Chair,
Yes,
Commissioner Fewens, I am ready to make a motion.
Okay,
I move forward to the City Council recommendation of approval for amendment to the final handbook for Phase 7 of the Kylie Ranch North Plan Development, PCN 18-0033, based on the findings set forth in the staff report.
This is Commissioner Brock, I second.
we have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you, motion carries. Next, we'll move along to PCN 18-0017, consideration and possible action, site 4.2 acres located at 7434 Baldwin Circle.
Good evening, Karen Melby, Development Service Manager. Before you are consideration of a development agreement, a voluntary annexation and rezoning for a property that's 4.24 acres located at 7434 Baldwin Circle, which is located within a island of Washoe County. You can see on the vicinity map, it's out here outlined in cyan. This would be Wingfield Springs Road. The property is bordered on two sides by the city limits. According to Washoe County assessors, this website, the single-family home on there was built in 1983. The current property is accessed from easements and not city streets, which upon annexation, the property will have to have access from city streets. There are 3 requests. The first one is the development agreement. The second one is the rezoning and, two, I'm sorry. Anyway, during the public noticing process, we did receive notice from a neighborhood who provided information that the subject property is encumbered by a declaration of restrictions, which these provisions prohibit placing residential structures on lots smaller than 1.8 acres. This restriction would prevent the applicant from developing the subject property as proposed. Accordingly, city staff recommends that the Planning Commission table the item before you tonight, the development agreement, annexation, and rezoning requests pending resolution of this legal issue between the applicant and other parties to the declaration of restrictions. Therefore, we are recommending that you table it. If you would prefer, I can make the full presentation on the findings. But since staff is recommending tabling this, I wasn't going to take up the time. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Ornelas?
Madam Chair, Karen, if I may ask Karen to also note that we did receive a request from the applicant for tabling of the item.
Yes, we did receive a letter which I forwarded to you.
Thank you. Do the commissioners wish to hear the presentation? Okay, thank you. With this is a public hearing item, and I will open the public hearing. And you have a couple of requests to speak. Justin Ivory. And if you can please state your name and your address for the record, please.
Certainly. Justin Ivory, I live at 7481 General Thatcher, which is just to the south of this property we're talking about. If you look at the map, you'll see that all the properties along General Thatcher that butt up to this existing 4-point-whatever acre parcel are all close to twice the size of the rest of the lots in Wingfield Springs. And they also come with a caveat that you cannot build a 2-story house along on that side of the street. And that was all because of the county that was, the county properties that were there prior to Wingfield Springs moving in. So all I would ask is the same rule apply. So if they want to build and subdivide this place, I understand 6,000 square foot lot, you probably couldn't get a house on it unless you did a two-story. But I don't care if they increase the lot size or whatever, but I don't think, you know, if we're not able to build a two-story house because they didn't want it, I think it should, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, so that's my public comment.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next, we have Denny, is it Tallman? Then also, if you can state your name and address.
Sure.
Thank you.
Denny Tallman. I live at 7489 General Thatcher Drive, which is, again, just to the south of the property we're talking about. And I was one of the very first people in Wingfield Springs. And this project, when Wingfield Springs was going several years ago, is protested very much by these exact same people that are looking to subdivide. And I'm in the construction business. I'm all for growth. I appreciate growth. But as Justin said, when we have certain setback rules, certain minimum square feet on our lots, if that's the case, they want to subdivide, they should have to do the same thing because we abided by their protests 15 some odd years ago. So all I'm asking is, again, I'm not opposed of growth, but they should have to abide by the same rules they asked for 15 years ago. As minimum, I believe it's 1.5 acre lots on our street now. There's not a house or not a lot less than a half acre on all of General Thatcher. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Okay, Lois, and I apologize, you'll have to pronounce your last name because I don't want to butcher it.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Well, thank you.
I live at 7495 Wingfield Springs Road.
If you can put your name on the record too, that'd be great.
Oh, Lois Eichholtz, Aichholtz.
Thank you.
Everything from A to Z. We've lived out on Wingfield Springs Road when it was Spanish Springs Road. And the people who were out there, all 13 of us moved out there because we enjoyed that rural lifestyle. Granted, things have changed considerably. However, I think to keep with the tone of the people from General Thatcher and our properties, which are considerably larger in the county, the main request would be to have their lots in this development be 10,000 square feet minimum. And it would make for a nicer development for them, and it would be just as productive for the landowner. Will the egress and ingress be off of Wingfield Springs into this property?
Miss Melanie, she's shaking her head. Staff is
Me?
saying, staff is shaking their head, yes.
Oh, okay. And it will be city water and sewer?
Karen, yeah, staff is saying
Okay.
yes.
This is what I'm concerned about. And so we appreciate your listening to our opinions. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, are there any other requests to speak on this item that you didn't sign in? If you'd like to, you're welcome to come up and speak. Okay, with that, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Carey.
Sure, certainly appreciate the public comment and that little bit of background on this project. I'd encourage maybe staff to maybe look into see if there's any documentation or any kind of record about, you know, the lot sizes and restrictions from the previous development. But with that, I concur with the applicant's request to table this. I would make a motion to table consideration of the proposed development agreement, DA 18003, associated with PCN 180017.
Second. Okay, I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Motion carries.
And Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to table consideration of the proposed annexation request, AX 18001, associated with PCN 180017.
Commissioner Fuin, second.
Yes.
Madam Chair, Allison
Yes.
McCormick for the record. The annexation and rezoning do require separate public hearings as well.
Okay, oh, thank you. All right, so I'll open the public hearing for the annexation. Is there any request to speak? Okay, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back for a motion, Commissioner Carey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to table consideration of the proposed annexation request, AX 18001, associated with PCN 180017.
Commissioner Fuin, second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Carey.
Another public hearing.
Oh, open the public hearing for RZ 18-0002. Any request to speak? Okay. Hearing none, I'll close public hearing. Commissioner Carey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to table consideration of the proposed rezoning request, RZ 18002, associated with PCN 180017.
Commissioner Brock, second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Motion carries. Next, we'll move along to PCN 17-0053, consideration and possible action, amendment to comprehensive plan to change the land use designation.
Good evening. Karen Melby, Development Service Manager. Before you is a comprehensive plan amendment to change the land use designation for a property located in what we're calling Stonebrook West. It's the western portion of the Stonebrook Plan Development. You can see how the boundary of the Stonebrook Plan Development is outlined in red here, and this kind of purplish pink color, lavender, I guess, would be the property that's under subject property today, or subject area. The proposed comprehensive plan amendment covers the western portion, which is approximately 167 acres in size, of the Stonebrook Plan Development. The portion under this request is designated commercial, business park, single-family, and multifamily residential uses. The Stonebrook Plan Development consists of approximately 610 acres and was approved for 2,135 dwelling units, 50 acres of commercial, 33.6 acres of business park. The City Council approved the Stonebrook final design standards and regulations on April 24th, 2006. To date, there are 2 subdivision maps that have been approved by City Council on the eastern portion over here. You can see some of the lots already built. Phase 1 consisted of 617 single-family lots, which under construction are 218 lots. Phase 2 was approved on March 14th, 2018 by City Council for 459 single-family lots. The portion of the Stonebrook Plan Development covered by this comprehensive plan amendment consists of 4 parcels. Oops, too fast. This is the existing master plan designation map. On this map, there are 14.1 acres of multifamily, 24, 50.9 acres of commercial, 33.6 acres of employment center, 46.9 acres of intermediate density residential, and 13.1 acres of open space. This is the proposed master plan amendment. The applicant was requesting to amend the land use map to have 19.1 acres of multifamily, 24, 38.6 acres of commercial, 33.6 acres of employment center, 54.2 acres of intermediate density residential, and 13.1 acres of open space. The proposed request does not change the number or type of land uses. The applicant's request proposes to relocate these land uses. The proposed changes are in part because the applicant is interested in creating a larger multifamily development which is not split by the drainage channel or Reach 4. Relocating the multifamily more central results in needs of shuffling some of the other land uses. If the comprehensive plan and land use amendment is approved, the Stonebrook final design standards and regulation, which is the handbook for Stonebrook, will need to be amended to reflect the approved land use pattern before any development can occur on this property. Addressing the findings. Finding CP1, which is conformance with the regional plan. Complying with goal 1.1, the subject property is located within the city of Sparks limits, and a portion of it is in the Tucky Meadows service area. The Stonebrook Plan Development is located in Impact Fee Service Area Number 1 and has been included in the city's utilities and facilities plans. The Stonebrook is, however, located outside of the 6-minute response time for the Sparks Fire Department in emergency medical response. However, the fire department can request inclusion of this area into the mutual aid agreement with the Truckee Meadows Fire Protection. So based on this, staff is of the opinion that this request complies with the regional goal 3.5. Finding CP2, which is the implementation of Sparks Comprehensive Plan. The proposed land use changes increases the exposure to Pyramid Highway for the commercial land use, and the new configuration of the employment center provides more flexibility while integrating it into the commercial land use area. For these reasons, the proposed amendment is consistent with goal MG1 for providing non-residential land use, goal MG2 for fostering diversity and land use mix, and policy MG1 for a diverse and integrated mix of residential and non-residential land uses. The increase in MF24 and IDR support goals H2 and policy H2 by providing additional lands for 2 different types of housing to meet the high demand for housing in this region. Policy MG5 requires a fiscal impact analysis. The submitted fiscal impact analysis and update letter concluded that the development will produce a revenue surplus to the city's general fund of $7.6 million over the initial 20-year period. The property is estimated to generate $2 million in revenue for the city's road fund, which with estimated expenditures of $8.6 million for a deficit of $7.6 million over the 20-year review period. Combining the negative road fund and the net positive general fund, this project would produce a positive impact of about $1 million over a 20-year period. Supporting policy MG5B and policy CF1, the Stonebrook Plan Development was approved in 2006 and has been included in the infrastructure planning for this region and is part of ISA number 1. As a development occurs, impact fees will be collected for the sanitary sewer and storm drainage improvements. Finding CP3, which is compatible with the surrounding land uses. The Stonebrook Plan Development is located on the southeast corner of La Posada Drive and Pyramid Way. This request is to change the land uses on 167 acres of the 610 total acres of the plan development. The intersection of La Posada and Pyramid is a commercial node. To the south is the Tierra del Sol Plan Development and the Washoe County Regional Park Lazy 5. Therefore, staff believes that the proposed Stonebrook land use changes will not adversely impact the surrounding land uses. Finding CP4, which is public notice. Public notice was published in the Reno Gazette Journal on July 20th, 2018. The neighborhood meeting held by the applicant was held on December 4th, 2017, with 7 people attending. Those attended expressed concerns about increased traffic on Pyramid and the traffic speeds on Pyramid. That concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions as of yet? Commissioner Carey?
Oh, I can hold on, sorry.
You want to hold
Madam
on?
Chair. Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
This is a public hearing, and I'll open the public hearing. Are there any requests to speak? Thank you. Okay, Cameron Adela. And if I pronounced your name incorrectly, I apologize. Can correct it for me, please? Could just state your name and address for the record.
My name is Cameron Andelin, 8100 Pyramid Way. Good evening, Planning Commissioner members. So I'm the neighbor to the east. We have a farm there that we operate. And I just want to go on record, we're not necessarily opposed to development and property owners' right to develop. And But we do want to go on record stating that we have a recorded easement through the subject property that we want to make sure that we're able to maintain and protect. It happens to, the location of it where it's been used, where we use it, happens to be kind of through the multifamily section, part of that. We also have our irrigation water comes from the ore ditch that goes through this property. And so we want to make sure that that would be protected. And the last thing I just wanted to go on record about is, should we desire to develop our property, we'd want to make sure that our ability to do that is protected, and with this adjacent development, that it wouldn't encumber or prohibit any of our development. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Danielle Donica.
Danielle Donegan, 25 North Tropicana Circle. I'm very confused why we're fighting this again, but I was here in 2006 when we were fighting the casino. I'm wondering why we want to put more apartments and more businesses there when we already have horrible, horrible, horrible traffic on Pyramid Highway. And the speed limit was increased to 55, which makes it absolutely impossible for me to not wait about approximately 8 minutes before I turn from Pyramid onto David James to get to my house now, which is already ridiculous. So she was saying something about you're gonna do $7 million in road construction if this happens. So my guess is they're gonna widen Pyramid, which means more noise for us because we're the second street off of Pyramid. More lights, speed limit would have to change, more congestion. I don't understand why we're saying we want apartments out there. And my question, and I don't know if you guys can answer this, or maybe you can answer this, what is an employment center? Can I get back up there? Oh, okay.
We'll make sure that she asks,
Okay.
we ask.
And also the intermediate density, what that means, what the definition of that means. In our sewer, they're talking about they're gonna be on city water. Of course, we're Washoe County, they would be Sparks, and that's how the whole thing started with the casino as well. Our sewer has been put off for like 12 years because we don't have a grant to pay for it because we have no money, I guess, in Washoe County, but Sparks can have everything else. The new subdivision that was put down at the end of David James has their sewer, has all that, all city stuff, but we're again another island of Washoe County, which gets forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more requests to speak on this item? Okay. Thank you. Is it Chris Mott? Mo. Go ahead and come on up. If you can please state your name and your address for the record, please.
Chris Moll, M-O-L-L, 7310 Aqueen Court. Ironically, I'm also the president of the HOA for off of Tierra del Sol or Serena Springs. And when I think about the time that I've spent and the one question that has come up over and over again, because I've seen this map somewhere before several years ago, but my residents' biggest question is, okay, when are we going to finish Tierra del Sol? When is that going to wrap around to Dolores? Because the congestion going in and out of there, with the increase in volume of traffic, it's getting ugly. We're going to have to send some ambulances out there. I saw one just coming up here today, all right, where somebody hooked that U-turn at Dolores, and they didn't leave a lot of room for anybody else. It was close. So, you know, to me, that's the big question. When's it going to be built? And also, what are you going to do with the ore ditch? Are you going to bury it? Because I don't see it shown here on any of these maps. Do we have any answer to those questions?
We'll ask staff when they come back up. We're making notes.
Okay, so what do you want me to do next? Just sit and wait for my answer?
Well, no, do you want to finish your
Well,
testimony?
Yeah, it's just like I say, my primary concern and the thing I want to be able to at least get back to the homeowners, including me, is, okay, when are they gonna finish that street? Okay, is it gonna tie around? And is it gonna be done before the development, after the development? Do we have any idea when that's gonna be done? So, there's also utilities out there, that, are already in the ground, and there's just no asphalt running to them. So all that underground work, as far as I can tell, all the way up to the property line, has all been done. So what are we waiting for? Okay?
Perfect.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you for the questions. Is it Robert? And what's your last name? I apologize.
I'm not for or against this.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. Can you say your name and your address for
I
the
live at
record?
1186 Hushfield Court,
Okay, and your name?
Robert Bartu.
Thank you.
And I'm not for or against this, but I do have an issue with traffic. And I think because you cannot leave my neighborhood safely right now, that needs to be addressed before we endanger any more other residents. And it's really that simple. If there is a fire anywhere out Pyramid Highway at 5 o'clock at night, no one is getting out of my neighborhood because the traffic just won't let you. I don't care if you extend La Posada out to the new parkway. Without doing something, people are gonna get hurt. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate that. Do we have any more requests to speak on this agenda item? Anybody that didn't sign in that'd like to speak? Okay. With that, I'm going to close the public hearing, and Ms. Melby, if you'll come back.
Before I address any questions,
Yes.
the applicant would like to make a presentation.
Please. Okay.
Good evening, Madam Chair. For the record, Andy Derling with Wood Rogers. Thank you for the opportunity to address you tonight. Just want to address a little bit, maybe to share with you maybe the justification, the rationale behind this request. The existing master plan designations that are shown on, oh, sorry. If I can get the overhead, please. The existing master plan designations that are shown on the screen are akin to what is approved in the Stonebrook PUD right now. The multifamily, which is located on the north portion of the site, is bifurcated by Reach 4, which is the green open space area that you see running through that. When the Stonebrook PUD was originally approved, the area just to the north of this was a former Washoe County park. So it sort of made sense from a land use perspective to have the park and the multifamily located adjacent to each other. Since that time, Washoe County Parks disposed of that property. It's been rezoned to commercial. In the county. It's located in unincorporated county. And as staff mentioned, now that kind of completed all four corners of the La Posada and Pyramid intersection to where you have really a strong commercial node at that location. Looking at that, we then kind of went to another level of analysis on this property to determine what were appropriate land uses at this point in time. Now, 15 years later, so what we determined is, commercial makes sense to have that co-located with the commercial at La Posada and Pyramid. We then, at the same time, felt that it was appropriate to have the multifamily as well as the IDR, the other moderate density residential, to also be co-located near the intersection of Dolores and Pyramid. To address maybe Commissioner Carey's comments from the workshop, there was a question about the size of the commercial. Is it conducive to big box commercial? Looking at sort of the market as it stands in the area right now, there are obviously considerable amounts of commercial to the south of this at the Galleria, as well as in Kiley Ranch, that are conducive to the big box style of commercial. Looking at that kind of saturation as well as just where the retail market is right now, really there is not as much of a need for that large commercial. So that's why there is a slight reduction in the commercial area, and you'll see on the map now we concentrated the commercial towards Pyramid in a little bit narrower band. There is still at the north end here some ability to have some larger box, but it'll be a little bit more limited than maybe it was in the past. We then wrapped the employment center, which is the business park. Primarily, we're anticipating that to be office type uses. We felt like that was more appropriate off of Pyramid to have that kind of commercial up there, and then buffering the employment center and the multifamily together. Those are compatible uses next to each other. With that, we felt like this was a much better land use at this point in time than what was previously approved. To address maybe some of the public's comments, Mr. Andlin, we are definitely well aware of the easements that traverse this property, whether it's access, power. So we've already reached out to him. We've had some meetings. We'll continue to meet with him on what's appropriate to perpetuate as well as possibly relocate. This is sort of a master planned area. You'll note that the extension of Dolores does go into kind of the greater Andlin farm area. So there are some anticipated connections that we know are kind of on the table. So we look forward to working with him as we continue. To address maybe some of the concerns relative to traffic, we've been working closely with NDOT on this. There will be a number of new intersections co-located with existing intersections at Robert Banks, Dolores, and some of the other roadways that are to the west side. With that, we will be building in additional turn lanes, some medians, things like that to help with the safety aspect of those intersections. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions, and we appreciate staff's comprehensive overview of this and are in agreement with our recommendation.
Great. Any of the commissioners have any questions for Mr. Drilling? Commissioner Carey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Andy, thanks for the additional info about the land use changes with commercial. I'm kind of curious, in your opinion, going back to the fiscal impact. So essentially, it's 12 less acres, give or take, less commercial, but then we're adding additional multifamily and single-family units on this property. In your experience, does typically reducing commercial land uses and adding more residential land uses, does that create more of a fiscal impact to the city, like in the positive direction?
As far as, when you're comparing it apples and oranges to a certain degree, when you're comparing commercial to multifamily, for example, you're not you're losing some sales tax potential, but you also don't have they're similar in the way that you're not maintaining streets in a multifamily the same way you're not maintaining streets in a commercial development, right? Those are private driveways, private parking, things like that. So from that perspective, there's a wash, if you will. The residential is more or less staying the same. The single family residential, I should correct, is more or less staying the same. I think really the moral of the story is this area was kind of oversaturated with commercial. We did maintain the employment center in its current acreage. That was a priority for us and for staff. So you'll note that the employment aspect of this remains the same. So you get benefits from that as far as live work and ability to capture trips within the greater Spanish Springs area within the valley itself. So those are all positives.
Great.
Thanks.
Anybody else? I just have a really quick question. Can you maybe drill down a little more on the employment center? So you're saying it's going to be like office, like, are you thinking dental, just service offices, not a big like call center or anything like that?
So there are a number of uses that are permitted in the business park in Stonebrook right now. Not having those on the top of my head, but we anticipate, just based on the kind of location of this, you're probably going to see something akin to what you see kind of on Sparks Boulevard with the offices and things like that. There may be some opportunities for some kind of larger employers. Not sure what those might be right now, but definitely there is a wide variety of anticipated employers that could come into this area.
Perfect. Thank you. Good.
Yeah,
yes,
Madam
Commissioner
Chair,
King.
Commissioner Fewens, there were a couple questions about the ore ditch. Yeah, what were you thinking about that?
Thanks for reminding me. So the ore ditch is identified, if you can see my pointer. So this green band, this open space band, is the ore ditch as it traverses through this portion of Stonebrook. So it in the handbook itself, there's a requirement that that effectively becomes an open space corridor with a regional trail. So that is a regional trail corridor. Whether it remains in an open ditch fashion or is piped is kind of up to the landowner, and obviously working with the ore ditch company on that. So there would be, I would anticipate, probably some piping of portions of it as it goes through the site. But at the end of the day, we have to perpetuate the flow of that irrigation water through the site. And over the top of that corridor will be a regional trail. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Karen. Any commissioners have any questions? Commissioner Carey?
Yeah, question for staff, concerning finding CP2, and in staff, they cited the comprehensive plan goal, MG1, and that's support economic vitality by providing non-residential land use spaces. The proposed comprehensive land use change reduces commercial land uses. I was just kind of wondering if you could provide some more information about the application of that policy and how it supports this project.
I mean, it's maintaining essentially the same amount of acreage. It's a little bit of a reduction, but staff felt that they still are maintaining the mix of uses, and that's why we felt that we could use that finding, because it still has a mix of residential and the employment center and commercial.
Okay, thank you.
Karen, I'm just gonna, because I wrote down a couple of the questions from a couple of the people that asked questions. Can you define what the intermediate density is?
Intermediate density is single-family residential. It is a density of 6 dwelling units to less than 10 dwelling units per acre.
Okay, thank you. Then another one of the questions was the finish of Terra del Sol to Dolores Drive. Now, I guess what my question is are they in unincorporated Washoe County, or are they within the city of Sparks?
Tierra del Sol is within the city of Sparks.
Okay.
That's on the east side of Pyramid.
Okay,
And that would be part of when they build their project, when they start construction, then we would be looking at all those, the infrastructure and those roads.
okay. Terrific, thank you. Anyone else have any other questions? Commissioner Reed?
Yeah, there was one other question by one of the public comments. They were concerned about ensuring that their property could be developed, that this wouldn't interfere in that. Can you address that?
As they start to develop, actually construct this project, I mean, at this point, we're only at a conceptual level of looking at bubbles of land use, but once they start doing the construction, we would make sure that we keep in mind that there are properties to the east that to be developed potentially in the future.
Thank you.
That was all I had.
You good? Anyone else? Okay. Any further questions? Okay. I will entertain a motion.
I'll entertain a motion.
Thanks, Commissioner Reed.
I move to approve the request to amend the comprehensive plan associated with PCN 17-0053 based on findings CP1 through CP4 and the facts supporting these findings as set forth in the staff report.
This is Commissioner Brock, I second.
So I have a first and a second. Is there any further discussion? Commissioner Carey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple comments for the record, if I may.
Of course.
Appreciate the additional info from the applicant and staff. I guess I'm a little concerned about losing any commercial land use in the city. I think from a fiscal perspective, there's going to be some impacts to the city's budget down the road. But I do concur with the assessment that the market for commercial real estate in the Spanish Springs Valley has changed over the past 12 years. And certainly, I think retail in general, the industry has changed a lot too. So, I think it makes sense that the reduction in the commercial land use might make sense. From my estimation, looking through the staff report, it looks like potentially we would be losing 46,000 square feet of commercial land use or future buildings that could be built on that land use. So I'm a little concerned about that, but I do concur and I appreciate the applicant holding on to the employment center land use. I think that's an important land use to keep. And I think that the new configuration should, provide some flexibility and maybe lead to a better development than what was originally proposed. So I'm going to support the motion. Just wanted to put those on the record.
Great, thank you. Any further comments?
Yeah, Commissioner Fewens.
Commissioner Fewens.
Again, we're rearranging a little bit of, and I'm going to echo Commissioner Carey's concerned about taking a little bit of the commercial, but we still, I think redoing the multifamily, getting it more closer to the downtown area is an important piece, and being able to do that. I just really want the applicant, and it'll be interesting to see what they do come up with NDOT for the safety on Pyramid Highway, and how they can increase the safety for the people that already live there. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you, motion carries. Next, we'll move along to PCN 18-0016. Consideration and possible approval of a conditional use permit to construct a 22,423 square foot casino with a restaurant.
I'm sorry, I just closed my attachments.
Oh, that's quite all right. Go ahead.
Of course, that's how that goes. Okay. No, you had it up, and I closed it thinking that I was closing yours. Anyway. Oh. So this is a, Madam Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, Ian Crittenden, Senior Planner. This is a request for a conditional use permit to locate a non-restricted gaming facility in the mixed-use district. The site is located at 1412 and 1416 Pullman Drive. As you can see on the vicinity map here, here's Prater and Pullman Drive. This is Marina Marketplace is the name of this commercial development. This is the Northern Nevada Career College, and just to kind of give you some orientation. As I mentioned, this is in the mixed-use district. It's in the mixed-use commercial designation within that mixed-use district. In 2017, we approved, or the Planning Commission approved, I should say, a major deviation to address the floor area ratio. And they also approved, you also approved a conditional use permit to allow for a parking facility. This request, if approved, is subject to the conditions of the major deviation. And this request, if approved, will replace or supersede the conditional use permit for the parking facility. This site is the last two undeveloped parcels within the Marina Marketplace. Not a subdivision, but a commercial development that was planned and mostly executed prior to the establishment of the mixed-use district. As such, these parcels really weren't oriented and configured for best application in the mixed-use district, and that was considered heavily during the both the major deviation application and the previous conditional use permit for parking. The applicant intends to relocate an existing non-restricted gaming license that's currently in use at 1114 Victorian to this location. That's in accordance with some NRS statutes that allows them to do that within the redevelopment district. That existing location on Victorian is in the redevelopment district 1, and so is this, and so they were able to move that without having to build the hotel rooms that are typically associated with those non-restricted gaming licenses. Casinos are a permitted primary use in the mixed-use commercial land use district. They are also, the non-restricted gaming facilities are a permitted use in the mixed-use district zoning, subject to a conditional use permit. Conditional use permits, just to remind the Planning Commission and maybe those in the audience that aren't aware, conditional use permits are designed to allow for staff and for the Planning Commission to address impacts of a use that is considered conforming or consistent with the area, but they may have additional impacts that need to be specifically addressed for that use to be continue to be seen as compatible. Staff has identified the following items as identified impacts. The first one was traffic. A traffic study was submitted and recommended additional storage in the storage capacity in the left turn lanes going west at Prater and Pullman. So here there would be additional storage capacity would have to be constructed. In the staff report, there was also a right turn lane on Prater going on to Pullman that was going to be required based on the RTP. There's been an update to that RTP, and that requirement is no longer being made. There have been some amendments to the conditions of approval accordingly, because that was a condition of approval that had been proposed. Those conditions have been handed out. As a point of reminder, when and if the Planning Commission recommends or makes a recommendation of approval or approves this project, if they decide to do so, it is 9 conditions of approval now and not 10, just clarity. An additional point of concern that planning or that staff came across was parking. The applicant has provided a parking study that reduced the required parking from 150 parking spaces per city parking standards to 72. And that's based on a study that observed a similar use at a rate of 0.36 parking spaces per gaming position. The city's standard is based on number of square feet. Additionally, staff looked at the APA, the American Planning Association's parking recommendations for gaming facilities, which referenced the city of Reno. They would have required 41 spaces. The applicant in their site plan has proposed 61 spaces on site with a requirement for a reciprocal parking agreement that would make available an additional 55 parking spaces, which would exceed the 72 total required. Peak parking for this use would be on the weekends when the adjacent dentist office would be closed, and so they would not have a conflict of parking at that time. And weekday parking peaks were estimated not to exceed the 61 parking spaces that would be provided on site. The third and last identified impact from staff was the mixed-use district design standards. The proposed development is in substantial compliance with those design standards, with the exception of the frontage requirement that comes out of the mixed-use district. It does require that 60% of the frontage, that would be the Pullman side of this property, have building frontage on it. The building be built adjacent to that roadway. Based on the estimates that the applicant has given us, that actually comes out to 59.3%. Which is less than 1%. Reduction actually turns out to be about 1.4 feet. The applicant is intending to seek a minor deviation, which is an administrative process to address that minor shortcoming rather than redesign the building to gain that less than 1.5 feet. Conditional use permits do have 5 findings that are supposed to be made. The first one is finding C1, which requires compliance with the comprehensive plan. Casinos conform with the comprehensive plan as they are specifically called out as a permitted primary use. We also found that staff also believes that goal MG1 is met by providing a non-residential land use. Goal MG4 is supported as this is an infill development. And policy CF1 is supported as city services can be provided at an acceptable level at this location. Finding C2 requires compatibility with the adjacent land uses. Gaming facility is compatible with those uses in the zoning uses in the Marina Marketplace, as they're similar in nature, if not in intensity. There are adjacent restaurants and uses that have limited gaming licenses, and so an unlimited gaming license and restaurants are similar in those use and that compatibility standpoint. The landscape or the adjacent use to the south would be multifamily. That will face the back of this building, which will not have any deliveries, and will also have a landscape buffer to separate the residential and non-residential land uses as required by code. The existing landscaping there, it will most likely meet that. We'll review that in more detail through the building permit process. There was a question posed at the study session about the distance. Based on the site plan provided by the applicant and best we could do for measuring with the mapping software is about 20-foot separation between the back of the casino use and the multifamily buildings. There's about 10 feet on either side of the property line. There's definitely 10 feet on the applicant side. It's approximate on the multifamily side because I happened to measure from the map. Finding C3 requires that the impact on natural resources be addressed. Development of this infill site is not anticipated to have to adversely impact the availability of natural resources. Finding C4 requires that the identified impacts are addressed. As mentioned earlier, staff identified 3 impacts. Those were parking, traffic, and the mixed-use district standards. We believe that the conditions of approval that have been proposed would address those identified impacts. And then finally, finding C5 requires that proper noticing be sent. Noticing was published in the Reno Gazette-Journal on July 20th, and notices were mailed to all property owners within 750 feet of this property. Noticing requirements for conditional use permits are actually only 500 feet, but we didn't meet the 30 individual property owners, so we had to go out to 750 to make that. Meet that. Staff is recommending approval of this item. I am available for any questions if the planning commission has them for me. Oh, and the applicant is here. Oh, he is here. He wasn't here a little bit earlier, but would like to make a presentation
Perfect.
after or before you have questions for me.
We'll have the applicant come up right now. Thank you.
Hi, Madam Chair, Commissioners. John Krompottek with KLS Planning representing the applicant. With me this evening is Sev Carlson. He's an attorney with Camphor Kroll. He's been involved in this since day one. I am going to, I have a lot of detail here, but I think staff has hit it pretty hard in terms of the key issues, that being parking, traffic, the MU standards, and I'm not going to be redundant unless you want me to get into the weeds. I was going to go through a few slides here. One thing that I would like to, let me go through a couple of slides and then we can get into questions. Key point to the MU purpose here. Look at I pasted in the definition. And if you look at the highlighted portion of that, the regulations create mix of uses with an efficient and compact development pattern that encourages shared parking and economical use of land. So it's key to meeting the purpose of the MU district and what we've brought forth here. Site plan, there was a little bit of discussion about this at the study session, and that relationship, that landscape buffer and that relationship to the multifamily. You notice that the building design intended as it is to be a separation between the multifamily. It actually serves as a buffer. It's a solid wall back there. There's no entry, there's no access, there's no loading, there's no anything. So if you think of that between the parking and the multifamily, it becomes very much a screen and a buffer for noise and any activity being loaded entirely on the other side. The other thing you can see there in terms of the reciprocal access, parking was a real challenge here, and we hit it hard and then did it again and again with the parking consultant. And it became clear that the rate and the code is for something other than this use. It's a hotel casino with destination type restaurants. And this is a neighborhood gaming establishment. And so I think, I'm confident saying that the parking is right based on this particular user and the level of study we did to get it right based on that number of gaming machines. The other thing that I think is important in this process is to look at that reciprocal parking arrangement, right? We've studied it such that, and it becomes clear that the peak hours identified for the gaming operation are evenings and weekend. And of course, the dental office is something completely different. So it works very much in a symbiotic fashion in terms of the reciprocal use of parking. Last thing you want to see, I think, is, it's very resourceful that way instead of a lot of what would be asphalt otherwise. I think that this came up going back a couple of slides, but in the study session as well, you look about, somebody mentioned, how does this advance the intent of the MU district? And if you look at what's going on around the site, you've got basically a broad mix of uses in what is the commercial and retail portion, this being the tail end of it, as staff had mentioned. You got 850 units of Park Vista apartments immediate to the south, and then the stuff that's going on south and west, 308 units approved, and 284 multifamily units under construction. There's going to be a lot of residential that could be feeding into a neighborhood type of casino, some of which obviously could be walking there, which supports, again, the MU concept. Also, employment across the street, that's a very broad range of uses, which is part of what you want to see to support and advance the purpose of the MU district. Landscaping, the standards in play, and I'm not going to get into the weeds again, but this was one where we actually had enough landscaping to meet the code. I'm just showing that it was, I think, about 15% required and 17 point something percent that is provided. The challenging standards, there were always a mix when in these MU standards, FAR drives a lot, right? And so when you're forced to have 37.5% coverage, that drives parking. So we were constantly working to balance the parking and the floor area ratio, primarily building coverage. There's just a shot showing you a good idea of that screen that's already been established adjacent to the multifamily. Then it also gives you some kind of perspective of what's going on in terms of the broad set of uses in the area. And that's just the master plan. So key issues, again, parking, traffic. I think we studied them pretty hard. I'd be glad to add any detail the commissioners might have in question. We support the intent of the MU district. The project complies entirely with the code with the exception of 59.3 versus 60 feet, which is actually 99% of the standard. And we all agreed that it's really not anything that's tangible to meeting or not meeting in this case. It's stuck as a matter of the site constraints. And then again, the site plan, I think it's key to note that this quiet side of the building is backing up to the multifamily. I have my own analysis of findings, but I'm not going to get into that as well. So we'll save it for any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any of the commissioners have any questions?
I have some questions.
Commissioner Reed?
I have some concerns with the parking. You said that you only needed 72 parking spots because you studied a similar property in southern Nevada.
Yes.
Why wasn't any studies done in the north of similar facilities? How many Dotties are up here in the north?
Do you know how many Dotties there are, Seth?
In terms of Dotties, they operate both non-restricted, and this is Sev Carlson with Kempfer Kroll for the record on behalf of Nevada Restaurant Services. The corporation owns both restricted and non-restricted locations. Restricted meaning you have 15 machines or less. Non-restricted meaning you're 16 machines or more under Nevada law. In terms of non-restricted, they operate the one on Victorian currently that we want to move to this location. They have a non-restricted license in Carson City with approximately 35 machines, I believe. And then the balance are restricted locations. So looking at a restricted location isn't apples to apples when you're looking at parking. They have a concept in North Las Vegas that's fairly new, that's using the same multi-concept, non-restricted location. And that's where the parking study was generated. It was compared with customer counts at any given point in time on how many gaming positions are in use at any given period of time in the day. And that's really tracked by the minute, by the half hour, by the hour. And so that information was provided to the traffic and the parking engineers to look at how many people are actually using the facility and how many trips does that ultimately generate, how many parking spots are actually necessary.
Thank you. And then I also had a question. You had mentioned a reciprocal parking agreement. Do you already have an agreement with the dental property?
We do not, the agreement is not executed yet. But we do have, as of, kind of scrambling the last couple of days, making sure that we could meet the condition, right? Because you got a third party involved. So yes, conceptually, it's an agreement. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Carey?
Questions for the applicant. Kind of following up on what Commissioner Reed was asking about with the parking study. I just want to make sure, how many units it's a North Las Vegas facility, and it's kind of in an existing shopping center, what it kind of looks like. How many gaming machines were at that location?
I think we have approximately 200 gaming positions at that location, so it's very similar to this proposed location with the 4 themes within the one non-restricted casino.
And I wanted to also ask about, sorry, wasn't expecting a quick answer like that. Very good, Seth. I was wondering if you guys had a copy of the elevations. I had a couple, and maybe the floor plan too. I had a couple questions concerning the business model.
What's that?
They are in my.
Oh, they are, okay.
Yeah.
You said floor plan as well?
Yeah, if we
Sure.
could.
You have floor plan as well? Oh, there we go.
Yeah,
Okay.
I've got everything in here. So yeah, you just scroll through and they're all there.
Okay.
Looking at the staff report from staff and what they kind of explained to us in the study session, one of the key part of the recommendation is that this would be operated as a typical Dottie's. That kind of is more along the lines of a tavern, non-restricted gaming use, as opposed to non-restricted gaming use. Similar to the Dottie's facilities. I think you guys own the Hoover Dam Lodge, I think one in Mesquite or something like that. I was kind of curious, based on this floor plan, if you could explain how this floor plan kind of works and how it kind of fits in with your typical tavern, or more along the lines of a non-restricted or restricted gaming.
I'm going to let Sev take that. He knows the Dottie's operation better. He's been working with them for years.
Right. So this, again, Sev Carlson for the record. So this concept for non-restricted gaming is fairly new to Dottie's. It's something that has been overall accepted by the customer base with pretty open arms. And so it's not your, again, traditional resort, hotel, casino, destination restaurant type of non-restricted establishment, but it's also not your traditional restricted tavern, bar, your traditional Dottie's that you've seen up north that has 15 machines or less. This concept uses the non-restricted license to essentially here create 4 themes, and we have locations where we have 3 themes. And so that could be reminiscent of, I'm thinking about the Nugget here in Sparks, when you had, different restaurants, different bar themes within it, and we're doing it through a bar theme and through different food service at each theme within the restaurant. So the way that Nevada Restaurant Services works, we have here the Points Casino. We have one that's still to be determined. We're just checking the market on what we want for one of the components of it. We have a Red Dragon component, which is Asian themed, and we have the Bourbon Street, which is a New Orleans theme. And there's part of it that's gaming. There's obviously a part of it that has bar alcohol service. There's also a component that would be similar to an adult Dug & Buster's with non-gaming games where patrons can earn, they still have to be 21, where they can earn drinks through playing those games. So it's a little more comprehensive that way and not just gaming themed in that way. It's been really fairly popular having this different option rather than just having a single theme within one casino. So that's really the modifier. Each themed section has a different menu as well. We don't have any grease traps because we don't have any fryers. Everything is finished prepared in a convection oven, similar to what the Ritz-Carlton uses for its lobster tails and similar to what Starbucks uses for any hot food that you order at a Starbucks. The food is preliminary prepared at the commissary, the corporate commissary. It's packaged and then it's shipped to each location, and it's finished when it's ordered by staff in a convection oven. So that's where we're not a destination-themed restaurant. It's really designed for patrons who want to get a snack with their drink while they're gaming. That's the concept.
No, thank you, Seth. And my last question, Madam Chair, for the applicant, could we go to the elevation? I think it's the south elevation. That one, yeah. So it's essentially 4 different themed casinos. So each one will have its own entrance, and it's all kind of connected, and it's themed like a. Okay.
Right. So we'll have 4 entrances from the exterior, and then once you're in any of if you were to enter at the Bourbon Street, which is in the center of the figure, you can work your way through all concepts once you're inside.
And the 4 themes it's like Bourbon Street, Red Dragon.
Correct.
Over the other
Points
two?
and one to be determined.
Okay, so it's not Dottie's.
It may be. We haven't made a final decision on that.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Any other commissioners have any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions of staff before I open the public hearing? Okay, this is a public hearing. I'm going to open the public hearing. Do we have any requests to speak? Okay. With that, I'll close the public hearing and I'll bring it back to the commission. Commissioners have any questions, comments?
Yeah, a
Commissioner
question for
Fewens.
Ian. Yeah, if you could come up. Thank you, Ian. In the staff report, there was concerns about Prater Way on the RTP, and then in the new set of conditions of approval, that is not anything has been mentioned in along Prater Way. Meaning, a couple things in the staff report that RTP standards, they recommended a I think a right-hand turn lane, and then the traffic analysis submitted by the applicant also recommended a left-hand lane on Prater Way from Pullman Drive, and then in the conditions, there's no mention of that. Can you mention why?
So, it was condition 8 that did recommend that the right turn lane based on the RTP was removed when we were updated by Amber Sosa, the traffic manager, may be able to more specifically say who and when and why some of these things changed, but essentially we were updated on which standards to use by the RTP. The new standards no longer require that right-hand turn lane, and so that condition was dropped. Condition on the new set, condition number 8, still reflects that the traffic analysis does make recommendations for left-hand turn lane. We had an update we received today. We have not had time to incorporate that, but we didn't want to specifically cite their older traffic analysis if the new updates are still compliant with current standards. So we left it a little more vague to say if they've provided a traffic analysis and city staff agrees that is the right way to address this, and if it meets city staff, the city engineer's approval, then that would be what we'd require them to do. We haven't had a chance to review that to see if that's the right one. We just didn't want to create a situation where you approved a condition that was specific that to use a different traffic study or an update to that traffic study, we would have to come back to the planning commission to do so. So we tried to make it a little less specific along those lines.
Madam Chairman, Commissioners, just to provide a little more clarification on that right turn. An older standard that was accepted in the RTP said at 90 right turns in the peak hour, it demanded, or it would call for a free right. Since then, the RTP has been updated. With the 2040 RTP, they reference NDOT access management, and NDOT access management was released in 2017, their most updated version, and that threshold now is 150 vehicles making a right turn in the peak hour. The current traffic analysis for this project is in the 120 range, so they would not trigger the threshold for that right turn.
Any other commissioners have any questions? Commissioner Carey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A few questions for staff. My first question is for legal, Ms. McCormick. For the Planning Commission tonight, I'm just trying to understand, make sure we're doing this correctly. So we are considering a conditional use permit for a non-restricted gaming use. And we're trying to determine the impacts and if the proposed conditions of approval mitigate those impacts successfully. Are we, in our review tonight, supposed to be looking at a particular business model? And are there any sort of assurances or guarantees that we can place that if the proposed conditional use permit is approved and non-restricted gaming is allowed on this property, because it's my understanding entitlements run with the land forever, is there any kind of assurances that what is approved tonight as a conditional use would stay that way? A long answer. I don't know if I really got a good question in there, but.
Am I understanding your question right if I am interpreting it as referring to not having hotel rooms on this site as would be required with a new non-restricted gaming license?
No, I'm sorry, I jumbled it up in my, I'll rephrase it, Madam Chair. In our review of the conditional use permit, we're not considering the proposed 4-themed casino. We're supposed to be reviewing non-restricted gaming use on this site because that entitlement would run with the land and it could be used by anyone.
That's correct, as long as they were complying with the conditions that have been imposed.
Okay. And my second question is, are there any kind of restrictions we can place on our approval tonight that restricts the non-restricted gaming use to the proposed square footage that's proposed with this, or the type of facility that's proposed in that conditional use?
Before I answer that question, I'm going to let Ian chime in on my answer to your first question.
Okay, thanks.
So, Commissioner Carey, just to address the conditions of approval, Condition 1 says this conditional use is approved as submitted and conditioned. Any substantial changes shall require review and amendment of this conditional use permit. That, staff believes that gets us to, this approval is for what they're requesting. Square footage, building orientation, anything that's substantially similar to that. I mean, if there's minor changes, minor elevation changes, staff can make those assessments. But any major change that's not in substantial compliance with what they've submitted would require coming back and talking with the Planning Commission again. If they were going to change square footage, number of gaming positions substantially, any of those kind of things, specifically because the parking study is based on gaming positions. If that were to change substantially, it would have to come back to this body to be reassessed. Does that address some of those questions, I hope?
I think so. I think you're getting close. You know, last year this commission approved a floor area ratio reduction, and the applicant is proposing to use that approved floor area ratio reduction for this facility. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is, if the commission approves conditional use permit for non-restricted gaming use, any operator could come in there and operate a non-restricted gaming use.
As long as it was substantially compliant with the submitted site design, floor plan, those kind of things, as long as it was substantially consistent with that, it wouldn't necessarily have to be Dottie's or Nevada Restaurant Services, Inc., or the name of the company. It wouldn't necessarily have to be that operator, but they would have to be substantially compliant with everything else that was submitted. Anything outside of that would require reassessment by the Planning Commission. Major deviations, because they are not specifically, or at least the one that was requested was not specifically addressing site design and so forth. It was specifically addressing just one criteria. It was less specific than this request, which is for a specific use and the submitted site plans and so forth.
Okay, that satisfies that question. I did have a question concerning the parking. As I understand it, our city code requires 150 parking spaces. The applicant has submitted a parking study that has a alternative parking standard that only requires 72 spaces. 61 spaces are provided on site. The rest would be covered off-site. So in staff's opinion, that the proposed conditional use is consistent with the surrounding uses, mostly with the reciprocal parking agreement for the dentist. I'm wondering how, in staff's opinion, the proposed conditional uses jives with the career college across the street. And where I'm going with that is, one of the things with what we've been told tonight, it's about 120 peak hour trips that are going to be driven to this site. We're providing a different parking standard, and we're meeting that parking standard because of the dentist use. What is the dentist office would be closed, they could park there. I know that the career college has a lot of night classes going on. I'm just kind of wondering, in staff's opinion, how the proposed conditional use is consistent with the night use across the street.
So staff did not look specifically at the parking requirements coming out of the career college, and Amber may need to come up here to correct me if I'm wrong, but the 120 peak hour trips at that intersection are not all generated by this use. That's just that intersection's peak hour trips. Those are going to wherever they're going at that intersection, not necessarily all to this location. As far as how this use is compatible or consistent with the career college adjacent, they're both located in a mixed-use district that allows both of those uses, is essentially how we looked at it as far as compatibility between those uses, but we did not specifically study their parking demand in connection with this use, since this use did provide their own parking study, and they were able to show how they could accomplish their parking requirements during their peak usage.
Mr. Ornelas?
Armando Ornelas. If I would just add, we, Commissioner Carey, we went back and forth with the applicant on an extended basis regarding the parking analysis. There was a series of clarifications. There was additional information provided. You can kind of see the record of, information that additional information that came in. And ultimately, we came to the conclusion that we felt that between the combination of the 61 on-site spaces and the condition requiring the reciprocal parking easement with the complementary, from a parking perspective, use to the east in terms of the Champaign Dentistry facility, that this use's need for parking could be satisfied on-site and with that condition. I appreciate the concern in terms of the career college. To the extent that that facility is underparked, I don't see where it would be, we could justify, requiring essentially this site to park the career college, if you will.
Thank you. Any more?
Maybe one more.
Go right ahead.
And I promise this will be my last one. So getting back to the mixed-use development overlay or zoning and land use on this property, I was reading through the comprehensive plan. It was mixed-use commercial district primarily coincides with designated activity centers and should contain a mix of integrated pedestrian-friendly uses such as retail, offices, and residential. Its development and design standards emphasize pedestrian comfort and safety and include direct pedestrian and bicycle linkages to adjacent neighborhoods. Mixed-use commercial areas should contain a mix of integrated pedestrian-friendly uses such as restaurants, outdoor spaces, plazas, and walkable retail streets. How does the proposed conditional use meet the vision of mixed-use development in our comprehensive plan?
So the requirements for pedestrian connection and so forth have been discussed and met by the applicant in providing for pedestrian connection to this location. From the standpoint of all of the design guidelines of sorry, trying to look for the right way to say this, but the overarching theme of what was supposed to happen in the mixed-use district and how it's supposed to develop, none of that specifically calls out casinos, although we know that casinos tend to have a higher foot traffic and pedestrian impact on the area around them. You can see that in the Victorian Square area and the things that happen there. But specifically, we also list as a permitted use in that district that casinos are permitted primary use in the mixed-use district, both from the land use stand side and from the zoning side. And so from that standpoint, they help further the goals of the mixed-use district by being permitted and this being that use. If that makes sense.
Fair enough, Madam Chair, thanks.
Good. Any other commissioners have any questions? Okay. Entertain a motion.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Funes. Thank you.
I move to approve the conditional use permit CU 18-0007 associated with PCN 18-0016, adopted findings C1 through C5, and the facts supporting these findings is set forth in staff report and subject to the 9 conditions of approval.
This is Commissioner Brock, I second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Commissioner Carey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you might have can tell from my line of questioning, I do have a lot of concerns with this proposed conditional use. From talking with some residents and business owners in this area, I think there's some very serious impacts to this from this proposed conditional use to the area. I'm very concerned about non-restricted gaming being allowed in a neighborhood and located 20 feet away from existing multifamily. You know, I want to support the city's redevelopment efforts, and I want to support the Champaign Dentistry family in their efforts to develop their property. However, I don't want it to come at the expense of another area. You know, this site, this commission approved a waiver to allow a reduced floor area ratio standard for an office, and that project's gone away and it's being applied to this use, which I don't think is consistent at all with the comprehensive plan and the vision for mixed-use development. You know, the fact that there's 120 peak hour trips being generated by this proposed conditional use, and we're only providing 61% or 61 parking spaces on site, that is gonna have a huge impact on the adjacent uses. And I don't see how it can be mitigated with the proposed conditions in front of us. You know, when this commission approved the the office last year, we also approved a special use permit for parking. I think at that point we recognized that there is a parking situation in this area, and it's going to have, and I don't see how this use will help that. I think it'll only make it even worse. Appreciate everyone's indulgence on that, but I don't support the motion.
Commissioner Carey, if we can go back and also correct, this usage is not going to create the 120 trips. They're just saying that that's how much goes by there. Do you want to go ahead and come back up again and thank you.
Amber Sosa, Transportation Manager. Yeah, just to clarify, the 100, and it's actually 160 trips, but that's not just for this usage. That's everything that's being generated going in the south direction, so using that. So to say that this facility itself is not generating the full 160. So to correlate that directly to their parking, it probably isn't directly correlated. I hope that helps.
Thank you for the clarification. I think, well, maybe the point, and I made it incorrectly, the point I was trying to make is that the fact that this is triggering improvements to the road, I don't think it's parked enough.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Fewens?
Commissioner Fewens, and with Mr. Carey's comments, I kind of respectfully disagree that mixed use, by definition, is going to be reciprocal parking. It's mixed use, in my opinion, uses other areas of different parking. It's why it is MUD, why it is mixed use. So we have adjacent property owners that do get reciprocal parking agreements, and I think that's where I found that I can make these findings, because you do have, it is a mixed-use district. By definition, you're probably going to have parking problems. That's why you come up with reciprocal parking agreement and different things to get to that area where you're at. It's kind of by definition what a mixed-use development is, so.
Any other comments? Commissioner Carey?
Maybe one comment I forgot to make. One thing I'm very,
Promised.
I know.
Sorry.
I apologize. One thing I'm really concerned about is that this is a proposed single use. It's a very intense use. Don't feel it's appropriate with the adjacent uses. But one thing I'm really concerned about, and I would encourage that we take a look at, and maybe the council as well too, is that what we're essentially doing tonight, or what our code essentially is allowing for tonight, is a 66% reduction in the required parking by code on this site. And that is that our code allows that to be done administratively. I'm very concerned about how that's done. We have a process in our code that allows for a minor deviation administratively and then a major deviation with the public hearing. I feel if you're going to have a 66% reduction of the requirement of code, that should be a major deviation, should require some, and I'll shut up now.
Madam Chair, Allison
Yes.
McCormick for the record. I may come to regret it, but I'm going to ask if Commissioner Carey would elaborate on why he views this use as incompatible with the surrounding land uses.
I didn't cover it enough? No, I think what I'm trying to get at, maybe unsuccessfully, is, I don't feel it's compatible with the existing uses because it's going to create a greater impact that cannot be mitigated with the conditions of approval, in my humble opinion.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion carries. Next, we move along to PCN 18-0005. Consideration possible action of a site 65 acres. We have a development agreement, comprehensive plan, and a rezoning. I think okay. Commissioner Carey, on our last, if you can say Commissioner Carey, nay, please, since we're having it recorded.
Oh, you didn't catch me?
No.
Okay, for the record, that was Commissioner Carey voting in opposition to the motion that was on the table.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, Ian Crittenden, Senior Planner. This is, as mentioned, a request for a development agreement, comprehensive plan amendment, and a rezoning on a site approximately 65 acres in size. The development agreement is primarily there as a way to help make the concurrency findings associated with the development, or with the, not with the development agreement, but with the comprehensive plan amendment and the rezoning. There are concurrency requirements to those. Some background on this site in general. It is a approximately 65 acre site composed of a 60 acre large parcel and then two 2.5 acre smaller parcels. The existing land use, which can be seen here, was approved in 2007. And then the 2.5 acres to the southern part of this were annexed in 2015, and they were rezoned to A5 at that time. So the DA was requested by staff in order to address concurrency issues with the master comprehensive plan amendment and the rezoning request. The site does not abut city streets because of the BLM property that is in between the city's property here at Vista and the site here. This is all BLM, including the area that is on the city park. It doesn't connect to our city infrastructure, and so we had to provide a way to show concurrency that would show how this area is going to be accessed and how necessary services were going to be provided in a concurrent manner to development of this property. So as you can see in this this plan, it's showing the existing access to the property here with the red line. So from the intersection of Home Run and Vista, it comes south to the intersection of Home Run and Touchdown, and then turns onto an unnamed access road that goes to a city maintenance yard, and then continues on and then back onto the property. The applicant is proposing, this is oriented the opposite direction. Give me a second. And that's the right orientation. Let me just zoom in a little bit. The applicant is proposing to access via the Home Run to Touchdown to a new access road which they would construct to access into their property. All of those roads are essentially private roads, including the ones that access the city parks. We don't own the right-of-way on those streets because it is over BLM in an easement that we have with BLM. The development agreement helps to allow for many of the concurrency findings to be made. Specifically, the development agreement establishes the nature of the use and the improvements that will be made and the timing for said improvements. Namely, it sets the number of units in the development to between 420 and 475. It requires documentation from the BLM that the access easement is for the densities described in the development agreement. So the new alignment, as kind of indicated in the blue, will have to be approved by the BLM, as well as the intensity of that access easement for the number of lots. The development agreement addresses off-site sewer improvements that will have to be made in order for this site to be viable. It addresses vehicular access improvements, which include an all-weather emergency vehicle access road, which is indicated by this kind of purple dashed line that goes around what will be future programming for Golden Eagle Regional Park on this kind of square property here. And that will provide emergency access and also can provide evacuation route for this development with wildfires in the BLM area. There will be required intersection improvements at the intersection of Vista and Home Run. There will also be intersection improvements at Home Run and Touchdown, and then obviously the new road constructed to access the property. All roadways will be required to be constructed to City of Sparks standards. The development agreement also indicates that all streets and sidewalks will be privately owned and maintained. The city may take ownership and maintenance over of a portion of the primary access road at a time when this area becomes programmed. We'll want to be able to control and maintain the road that accesses part of our programmed parks. And so that's also indicated in the development agreement. The development agreement also requires the documentation of estimates for private street maintenance, estimates for the cost of private streets maintenance be submitted, and the funding mechanism that will be provided to be able to maintain those roads prior to any tentative maps being submitted by the applicant. We also require that the developer provide pedestrian and bicycle access to Golden Eagle Regional Park, the Golden Eagle Regional Park. There is a requirement that a minimum 25-foot landscape buffer be maintained to help to mitigate the impacts of Golden Eagle Regional Park, which is a louder and brighter park than most neighborhood parks would be. And that may not be able to be completely mitigated, but what can be, we are requiring that be done in that 25-foot landscape buffer. Staff views that the development agreement is consistent with the comprehensive plan, as the development agreement obligates the developer to construct private access infrastructure to a site that does not abut public right-of-way. The development agreement supports and is consistent with the following comprehensive plan goals and policies, specifically policy MG5 that requires that infrastructure facilities and fiscal impacts be addressed, and policy CF1, which requires that city services be able to be provided at an acceptable level. The development agreement provides for those goals and policies to be met. Staff does recommend that the Planning Commission make a recommendation of approval to the City Council for the development agreement. Moving on to the comprehensive plan. As I said, there are three items associated here. Let me. Now we gotta go back to the other one. So the existing land use on this property, as I mentioned, was approved in 2007. There are, in the C land use, so the commercial land use category, there's 6.26 acres. The MF24, which is multifamily with 24 units per acre minimum, or maximum of 24 units per acre, is 15.57 units. HDR, which has a minimum density of 24 units per acre, there's 18.56 acres of that. Open space, there's 8.12 acres. Large lot residential, there's 5 acres. Those are the two lots to the south. And then there's also 11.4 acres of mixed use. The applicant is requesting to change all of those land uses to IDR, which is intermittent density residential, which allows 6 to less than 10 units per acre. Findings associated with the comprehensive plan amendment are CP1, which requires conformance with the regional plan. Goal 1.1 of the regional plan requires that 99% of all residential growth and population growth happen in the TMSAs. This is in the City of Sparks TMSA. Also, goal 3.5 of the regional plan requires essentially concurrency, and this goal of concurrency is accomplished through the development agreement, addresses those concurrency requirements. Finding CP2 requires that the proposed amendment implement goals of the Sparks Comprehensive Plan. Again, we cite policy MG5, which requires us to look at infrastructure and fiscal impacts. Policy CF1, which addresses city services, and goal H2, which addresses the provision of housing and fiscal sustainability. Goal MG5 requires a fiscal impact analysis. The applicant did submit a fiscal impact analysis which shows a $2.8 million positive impact over 20 years. The development agreement provides for policy CF1 to be able to be supported in that the provided levels of service can be met. And then goal H2, this site does propose to build somewhere between 420 and 475 homes, and shows a positive fiscal impact which supports goal H2. Finding CP3 requires compatibility with the surrounding land use. The surrounding land uses are open space, parks, and large lot residential. All of these land uses are compatible with and complementary to proposed intermediate density residential land uses. And finding CP4 requires proper notice. This public notice was published in the Reno Gazette Journal on July 20th, and the applicant held a neighborhood meeting on April 4th. And staff is recommending that the Planning Commission approve the comp plan amendment request. And then finally, for rezoning, the site is currently zoned A5. The applicant is requesting the site be rezoned. All three parcels are currently A5. The applicant's requesting a rezone to SF6, The Essex zoning has fewer permitted uses than the A5 zoning district. However, it does allow higher density residential. Finding Z1 requires consistency with the comp plan. If the Planning Commission approves the comprehensive plan amendment, then this would be consistent. If the Planning Commission does not approve that, then this would not be consistent and should be remembered as those motions are made. Finding Z2 requires consistency with the surrounding land uses as mentioned in the comp plan portion. The surrounding uses are park, open space, and large lot residential. Single-family residential would be a compatible and complementary use to those uses. And finally, Z3 requires proper notice. Public notice was published in the Reno Gazette Journal on July 20th. Notice was mailed to all property owners within 2,000 feet. Normal rezoning is 750, but to get to the required minimum of 30 individual property owners, we had to go out to 2,000 feet since most of this is owned by the BLM adjacent to this property. Staff is also recommending Planning Commission make a recommendation to City Council of approval of this request. That is the end of my presentation. I am happy to answer any questions. The applicant is also here if you would like to talk with him.
Great. So would the applicant like to come up?
Good evening. For the record, Mike Rayleigh with Rubicon Design Group, here representing Discovery Builders. Representatives from Discovery Builders are here with me tonight, along with our project engineer. I think Ian's staff report is very thorough, and Ian did a very good overview in his presentation. We're simply here to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you. Any commissioners have any questions of the applicant? Commissioner Fewens?
Yeah, Commissioner Fewens. Hi, Mike. In the development agreement, it's mainly was talking about, I was a little bit concerned, and maybe it's just a statement. East of the Golden Eagle Regional Park, and then west of this, you're gonna have a road. And then in the development agreement, there was some wanting bicycles and pedestrian access to Golden Eagle. And in the development agreement, it says the master developer should provide a traffic circulation plan to discourage or prevents Golden Eagle Regional Park. So when it gets really busy out there, to have people probably parking along that road.
Right.
What are you kind of visioning on that?
That's something that we'll definitely address with tentative map, but I think there's a variety of ways that we can do that through a final design of a subdivision. We're not quite to that stage yet, but, we can look at ways of incorporating landscaping and berming buffering where it would discourage people from parking. It would make it essentially inconvenient for them to park there and get to the park.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other commissioners have any questions? Okay, thank you. This is a public hearing. I'll open a public hearing. Do we have any requests to speak on this item? Okay. Sir?
I don't know if you need this or not.
Yeah, we do. Thank you. And if you'll just state your name and address for the record, please.
Sure, excuse me, it's Dean O'Connor. I live at 4313 Black Hills Drive. And I had a few questions, but when I purchased this house, we looked at multiple homes in the area and chose this house and paid significantly more money simply due to the area on the south side that was open and the views. So one concern that I would have is that when this new when the new buildings go up, that it's going to significantly reduce the value of my home. And then on the other side of that, just a bit concerned about safety and all the traffic that's out. I have young children that actually go from our house around and over to the park. So just want to make sure that they would still have access that's safe. And again, back to the traffic, it's just a pretty big concern given that the way that they designed it. One question I do have is this area directly south between Black Hills and the development, that will continue to stay open in BLM? Sorry, this area. That will stay open and it will not be developed?
We'll call staff up. We'll have staff address that question as soon as you're done with your testimony.
No,
Okay?
no problem. Just the just the point of the reduction in value of our home due to the development and the increased traffic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dean.
Any other requests to speak? Okay, I'll close the public hearing. I'll bring it back to the commission. Ian, please. If you can please address his question.
Yes, the area that the gentleman had requested, that's actually is scheduled for future park improvements, and so it would not be developed in terms of housing, but potentially future flat fields is what currently the Parks Master Plan has anticipated for that area. We don't have a timeline on that. We don't have funding lined up for that just yet, but it is the future plan, and that was part of the discussion for the emergency evacuation or the emergency vehicle access road that kind of wraps around the outside edge of that, is to avoid passing through what would be hopefully future programmed park space.
Great, thank you. Any commissioners have any further questions? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Commissioner Fewens?
Commissioner Fewens?
Yeah.
Thank you.
For the development agreement, I move to find the proposed development agreement associated with PCN 18-005, consistent with the Spark Comprehensive Plan, and move a forward of recommendation of approval to the City Council.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Any discussion? Commissioner Carey?
Thank you. I support well, I seconded it. I think I really like the language in the development agreement with, it's really Section D, Part 4 about the urban interface. I think this is something to take a look at when we get to the tentative map. But wildfire obviously is a huge issue, huge concern in this area. I think one of the things we should maybe take a look at, we're providing the buffer to Golden Eagle. I think we should take a look at providing a buffer to the public lands to the east. Another concern, looking at the Carson City BLM field office management plan for the lands of the east, there's some significant uses that are out to the east. And I think when we get to the tentative map, I would encourage staff to take a look at restricting access, vehicle and off-road vehicle, to the lands to the east, and enforcing that access to the existing access point to the south near the park. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Any other commissioners have any comments? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Next,
Madam Chair?
Commissioner
for the
Fewens.
For the comprehensive plan land use
Madam
amendment
Chair.
request.
I believe a public hearing
Oh, I
is required as well.
apologize. See, when you put it all under one, it's hard, okay? This is a public hearing item. I'm gonna open the public hearing. Do we have any requests to speak? Okay, with that, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Fewens.
Madam Chair, for the comprehensive plan land use amendment request, I move to approve the comprehensive plan land use amendment MPA 18-001 associated with PCN 18-0005 based on findings CP1 through CP4 and the facts supporting these findings as set forth in the staff report.
Commissioner Brock, second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Commissioner Carey.
Thank you. Some comments for the record on the proposed comprehensive land use change. I can recall from being on the Parks and Rec Commission when Golden Eagle Park was being designed. I think the original intent of the land use that were proposed to be changed in the motion was would be commercial and residential services to help with Golden Eagle Regional Park. I think that the proposed comprehensive land use change is more consistent with the existing land uses in this area. I think single family is more appropriate considering the important land uses on the federal lands to the east. I'll be supporting the motion.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Motion carries. Next, I'll open the public hearing for the rezoning. Do we have any requests to speak? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Fewens, would you like to? Thank you.
This is called a turkey, I think, in bowling.
There you go. Just moving it
Madam
along.
Chair, Commissioner Fewens, for the zoning request, I move forward a recommendation approval to the City Council for the rezoning request RZ 18-0001 associated with PCN 18-0005 based on findings Z1 through Z3 and the facts supporting these findings as set forth in the staff report.
Commissioner Brock, second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you, motion carries. Next, we move along to general business, PCN 18-0032, consideration of a possible recommendation of approval of tentative map.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Planning Commissioners. I'm Jonathan Cummins, Assistant Planner. PCN 18-0032 is a tentative map request for a 39-lot, single-family residential subdivision on a site of 5.38 acres in size in SF6, single-family residential zoning district. The project's located on the southeast corner of Wedekin and El Rancho, outlined in cyan on the image. I'm going to skip to. Main access to the subdivision will be off of Garfield to the south of the project. There'll be emergency access on the northwest corner, which will be gated and used only for emergency vehicles. The piece on the southernmost part of the project here is currently an easement on the church property, which sits to the west. The applicant's in negotiations currently to acquire that property and record a boundary line adjustment to include that in the subdivision. The project will incorporate a mix of lot sizes to include what the Sparks Municipal Code calls small lot development. The code requires that small lot development meet two requirements: that the density maximum is maintained by the subdivision. In the case of SF6 zoning, the density maximum would be 7.3 dwelling units per acre, and this proposed project would be 7.25, meeting that standard. And the second requirement being that any undeveloped parts of the subdivision be deed restricted as common area, meaning that the common areas will remain common areas. Just a little bit more background and to clarify on a couple of things that we've discussed since Tuesday at our study session. The land use designation for the parcels is in fact IDR, intermediate density residential. And to sort of give it a little bit of background on how we got there, the Planning Commission and City Council both approved the annexation of these parcels to be converted from county zoning of E1 state residential to SF15, and subsequently applicant requested that it then be rezoned from SF15 to SF6 to allow for this type of development. Tentative maps require the 12 following finding to be made by the Planning Commission. Finding T1, conformance to the comprehensive plan. Staff believes that goal CF1 can be met, that the city and the developer provide adequate service levels, and that those service levels are available by the city. Goal MG6, to promote compact development and reduce impacts on the city. Staff believes that the project satisfies policy H1 by allowing for appropriate zoning districts to exist throughout the city for new housing. Additionally, policy H2 to promote a variety of housing types, as well as policy CC8, creating neighborhood diversity. Finding T2 requires conformance to the street master plan. Streets in the subdivision will be internal to the project and subsequently privately owned and maintained by a homeowners association. Finding T3 requires that we address appropriate health laws and regulations and ensure that they're being met. We received no comments from those such agencies. Finding T4 requires the availability of water. Truckee Meadows Water Authority will serve the property and appropriate water rights are in place. Finding T5 requires we address the availability of utilities. Staff is going to require that the developer make the necessary improvements to hook to city sewers prior to the final map stage. T6 requires the availability of other public services. Staff received comments from the Washoe County School District, which indicated that there would be potentially 5 new students housed in the subdivision, 3 elementary school students, 1 middle school, and 1 high school student. Police and fire are already served by the city of Sparks, and the Regional Transportation Commission of Washoe County provided comments to guide in the design in accordance with their standards. Finding T7 requires that impacts on existing streets and highways be addressed. Applicant states that there will be less than 80 peak hour trips created by this subdivision and therefore no traffic studies required. Finding T8 requires we address the physical characteristics of land, floodplain, slope, soil, Final hydrological and geotechnical reports will be required prior to the final map stage. And the slope does not exceed the minimum of 10%, which would be required in the Sparks Municipal Code to trigger hillside development standards. Finding T9 requires review by outside agencies not previously addressed. We received only comments from the school district and RTC. Finding T10 specific to fire protection, the project site falls within the 6-minute response time of the Sparks Fire Department, which is already currently serving the site. Finding T11, any other impacts identified by staff, landscaping and architecture review will be addressed in the future. It's not part of this approval. However, that's part of the development that we're anticipating on the site, and therefore that's something that we're pointing out to the developer. And finding T12 requires public noticing. This planning commission and the subsequent city council meetings will function as the public hearings for the item. To address the commission's questions from Tuesday, there's been no contact from the public regarding the project as of this evening. And so with that, staff recommends the planning commission forward a recommendation of approval to the city council.
Thank you.
Questions?
Thank you. Is the applicant here? Would the applicant like to speak?
Good evening, Madam Chairman, Vice Chairman, and other esteemed members of the Planning Commission. My name is Brian Newman. I'm with Meridian Land Solutions and Design, representing the applicant, LLS LLC. And with me, of course, is this super stud here, Mr. Greg Evangelatos, land planning consultant. Just like the two people before us, we think staff did a great job rather than being redundant, and I think we all want to get out of here soon. We're just here to answer any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you. Do any of the commissioners have any questions of the applicant? I see you guys lucked out.
No.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Do any of the commissioners have any questions? No, I don't. I'm actually with it now.
I'm not.
Okay, with that, I will, I'll entertain a motion, please. Commissioner Carey.
Yeah, I concur with staff's recommendation. I think that this proposed tentative map is consistent with the land use designation that we previously approved. I think this will be a really good infill development and will provide a good housing choice in this part of the city. With that, I'll move to forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council of the tentative map for the Wild Creek Meadows subdivision associated with PCN 180032, adopting findings T1 through T12, and the facts supporting these findings as set forth in the staff report and subject to the conditions of approval 1 through 15.
Commissioner Brock, I second the motion.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Is there any further comments? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Motion carries. Next, we'll move along to PCN 18-0034.
Good evening, Chairman and Planning Commissioners. I'm Karen Melby, Development Service Manager. Before you is a tentative map request for 310 single-family lot subdivision within the Kylie Ranch Phase 7 planned development. Outlined here in cyan is the planned development. Boundary, south boundary would be Windmill Farms. West boundary is Kylie Parkway. North boundary would be Lazy 5. Kylie Ranch Village 9 encompasses the entire Phase 7 final plan development for the Kylie Ranch North plan. The land use designation is low-medium residential, which permits 3 to 6 dwelling units. This is within the handbook, not the city's designation. The gross density of this proposed tentative map is 5.3 dwelling units per acre, which complies with the Phase 7 handbook. In March 2018, the City Council approved a tentative map with 20 conditions for a subdivision on at this location for 344 single-family lots. The master developer would like to develop this as a gated community with private streets, so they have submitted a new tentative map, which is what you're reviewing tonight. The subdivision street network is similar to the previously approved tentative map. If approved, this new tentative map would supersede the March approved tentative map.
This is the tentative map. The Village 9 is proposed to be developed in 3 sub-villages with the average lot size of 6,235 square feet. An anticipated phasing is from the south, which would be Windmill Farms, to the north. The master developer is planning to provide a private clubhouse to the residents of the Village 9. The master developer is proposing to have gated entrance gates at Granary Park Avenue, Dabbler Way, and Hoot Owl Way. The Junebug Drive will be gated as an emergency access only, and that's condition 21. With the installation of the entrance gates, the street network must be privately owned and maintained by a homeowners association or a sub-association. The sub-association will be responsible for the maintenance of the private streets, utilities, and the recreational amenities provided in common areas within. The primary access to the project is via roads that intersect with Kiley Parkway, Windmill Farms Parkway, and also Lazy 5 Parkway, which all conform to the Kiley Ranch North Phase 7 handbook. The roads are designed to handle the anticipated traffic generated by this tentative map. The applicant provided a queuing analysis prepared by the traffic engineer to address the stacking of the vehicles in the PM at the entrance gates. The traffic engineer recommends that the gates remain open between the hours of 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. to avoid queuing onto the surrounding streets. This recommendation was added to the Phase 7 Final Plan Development Handbook. Addressing the 12 findings, finding T1, which is conformance with the master plan and zoning ordinances. The land uses in the Kiley Ranch Plan Development have been adopted as part of the Sparks Comprehensive Land Use Map. The gross density of the tentative map is 5.3 dwelling units per acre, which complies both with the Kiley Ranch North Phase 7 Final Handbook and also the city's comprehensive plan. The tentative map complies with policies C4, C1, CF1, policy CC8, policy H1, and policy H2, because the sidewalks are provided on both sides of the private streets. City's infrastructure modeling has been included this subject village. The gated community will provide a different housing option in the Kiley Ranch North Plan Development, and the tentative map provides an alternative single-family community not offered in the city of Sparks. Finding T2 conforms to the conformance with the city's master plan of streets. The tentative map incorporates street designs shown in the Kiley Ranch North Phase 7 Plan Development Handbook. The project requires extension of the Kiley Ranch Parkway and Lazy 5 Parkway to access this project site. Finding T3, which is the environmental and health loss. This application was distributed to the various agencies that provide basic services and administrative environmental and health laws. The developer must comply with all the requirements of these agencies, which is condition 4 with the final map. Finding T4, which is the availability of water. The developer has estimated the water requirement for this development would be 1.95 acre feet per year for the domestic water. The water rights needed to serve this project are in place or will be dedicated with the final map, which is condition number 6. Finding T5, the availability and accessibility of utilities. The developer has estimated that the sewage flows for this development will be 281,975 gallons per day. The applicant will be required to provide evidence that there is adequate sewer capacity to serve the project prior to the recordation of the final map. The stormwater and private drainage for the development shall be reviewed and approved by the Engineering Division of the Community Services prior to the recordation of the final map, which are conditions 14 and 8. Finding T6, which is the availability and accessibility of public streets. Public services. The schools currently zoned for this area are Hall Elementary School, Shaw Middle School, and Spanish Springs High School. Washoe County School District did provide a letter to us, and they project that the number of students generated by this project will be 113 students, of which 7 will be elementary school, 14 will be middle school, and 29 will be high school students. Sparks Police will be provide the police services. Regional Transportation Committee provided comments, which is attached to the staff report. The emergency and Fire and emergency medical response will be provided by the Sparks Fire Department. At this time, the project is located outside of our 6-minute response time for the Sparks Fire Department, which the city has an agreement with the Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District for mutual aid to serve this area. The Sparks Fire Department requires 2 means of access to this Village 9 prior to any combustibles being stored on site, which requires the construction of Kiley and Lazy Five Parkways, which is condition number 12. Finding T7, the effect of the proposed subdivision on the existing public streets and needs for new streets. It is anticipated that the project will generate 3,008 average daily trips with an AM peak hour of 237 trips, a PM of 316. These traffic impacts from the project have been considered, and with the review and approval of the Kiley Ranch North Phase Final Development Handbook. This tentative map does not change the traffic patterns or the generate increased trips as planned with the surrounding streets is identified through the handbook. As part of the application, a queuing analysis was provided, which is Exhibit 3 of our in the traffic queuing letter. For the entry through the gates into Village 9 was prepared by the traffic engineer for this project, as discussed in detail previously. Finding T8, physical characteristics. Floodplain, the majority of the property is in the Federal Emergency Management Agency zoned X. However, approximately 8 acres on the east side is located in Zone A, which the applicant is proposing a letter of map revision from FEMA to use to be so that they can fill and raise these lots out of the Zone A. The site is relatively flat with slopes less than 5% over the entire property. In soils, a final geotechnical report will be required with the final map. Finding T9, entities review comments or recommendations. City has received letters from the Washoe County School District, Washoe County Health District, and Washoe County Regional Transportation Commission, which these letters are attached to the staff report and have been addressed in the staff report and/or the conditions of approval. Finding T10, the availability and accessibility of the fire protection. As I stated earlier, fire protection will be provided by the Sparks Fire Department, and as discussed under finding T6. Finding T11 addresses that identified impacts. Identified impacts are landscaping and architecture. There are 12 common areas within this subdivision to be maintained by the sub-association. The final map will be part of the final plans, will be a part of the final map and approved prior to the recordation of the final map. This is condition 10. Village 9 will be a single-family homes with ranging size from 1,200 square feet to 3,000 square feet. The architectural style must comply with the Kiley Ranch North Phase 7 handbook, and the architectural elevations will be approved with the final map, which is condition 7. Finding T12, which is public notice, the Planning Commission and City Council function as the hearing for this item. Staff is recommending approval with 22 conditions of approval. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Do any of the commissioners have any questions at this time? Okay, would the applicant like to speak?
Good evening. Once again, for the record, Mike Rayleigh with Rubicon Design Group, here representing KM2 Development and DR Horton. We are in agreement with all the conditions as outlined by Karen, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Do the commissioners have any questions? The applicant? Okay, thank you. Okay. Any questions of staff? Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion.
Okay, Commissioner Reed.
I move to forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council of the tentative map for Kiley Ranch North Planned Development, Village 9, associated with PCN 18-0034, adopting findings T1 through T12 and the facts supporting these findings as set forth in the staff report and subject to the conditions of approval 1 through 22 as listed in the staff report.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Commissioner Brock, I second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you, motion carries. Next, move along to public comment. Do we have any requests to speak? Okay, with that, we'll move along to comments from the commissioners. Commissioner Carey, you had asked if you could have a couple minutes at the end of this meeting. And I don't know that I want to honor it, but go ahead.
No, that's okay. We can,
Can you be quick?
let's just push it off till the next meeting.
Do you want to do that? Okay.
Yeah, well, thank you for reminding me.
You're welcome.
I forgot all about it.
Do any of the other commissioners have any comments? Okay, with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, thank you, we're done.